Is it true that the companions of the Prophet Muhammad turned from abject poverty to enormous wealth? Is it true that they are ascetic in this mundane life, dedicated only to worship and to preaching? Where does their wealth come from? Is it true that their practice of Islam is the truest and that we should follow it? How did they make use in the bloody political struggle for power? Welcome to With Shoaib Show. Welcome to With Shoaib Show. Our paramount question today is, were most of companions of the Prophet Muhammad ascetic in this worldly life, whose goal in life was to preach Islam? Or most of them used Islam to become extremely wealthy? It is important for me to say that today's episode is absolutely not intended to offend the companions of the Prophet Muhammad. I'm Muslim. Criticizing them, with all due respect to them, does not mean departing from Islam, as they are human beings who do right and wrong, and the Quran said about the Prophet Muhammad himself, that he is a human being who makes mistakes and is right. The Islam that I believe in does not sanctify human beings. Let's see what the narrations say. The narrations say that most of them led a poor life in the Medina community, to the point of tying stones to hungry bellies. Even if there are rich people among them, as we shall shortly see, these fortunes have multiplied dramatically. After the demise of the Prophet, the invasion operations developed and expanded during the reigns of caliphs who ruled after him, Omar and Othman, and resulted in plenty of material resources that the Arabs had not dreamed before. Muslim researcher Muhammad Abed al-Jabri in his book The Arab Political Reason describes this new situation by saying, the spoils of Iraq and the Levant and others differed from the booty that the Arab tribes knew among themselves of camels and sheep. Spoils of war this time, the matter is related to the treasuries of major countries with an ancient civilization, the savings of cities, the yields of fields and orchards, and movable money of gold and silver, as well as livestock. The share of the ruling center in the city was 1/5, which is not a small thing. In the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah, 1/5 was estimated to be between 12 million and 60 million dirhams. In addition to the spoils, there was the kharaj, taxes imposed by the Arab invaders on the peoples they occupied, which became a constant main source of income in the Arab colonial empire. Muslim researcher al-Jabri provides approximate figures for the income of the kharaj during the era of ruling Caliph Omar ibn al-Khattab. He mentions that the kharaj, tax, of Iraq was estimated at 80 million dirhams, currency at the time, and the people of Egypt 140 million dirhams. That is, according to Arab sources, the wealth came from the conquest and occupation of lands and tax levy and other similar things. It is important to stress that this money was not used for the benefit of the conquered peoples. That is, they are like all the invaders in the ancient world, and therefore it is difficult for me as a Muslim to give them any sanctity. This moves us on to a question about how to distribute such spoils of war. Researcher Hamid Fati says that the ruling on the booty, which is the wealth that came from military expansion, was that it should be divided into 5 shares, 4 of them to the fighters, and 1 to the caliph and retinue. In addition to the tax money imposed on the people, the caliph and his entourage seize it alone. The history researcher Hassan Hafez says, the first caliph Abu Bakr distributed the money almost evenly among the courtiers. In the era of the second caliph Umar bin al-Khattab, when the income increased out of major invasions, he made allowances of money for the courtiers, but not equal. As I said, was not money in exchange for work. The well-known researcher Muhammad Abed al-Jabri says, before Islam, the concept of justice in Arab society was determined based on the tribe, and of course, it means the strongest tribe. The stronger tribe is the one that gets most of the spoils. Within the tribe, the distribution was according to the strength of the branch of the tribe. Indeed, this is an unfair standard. However, the second caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab, found that the criterion of kinship to the Prophet as the leader, meaning the political ruler, would allow the old enemies of Islam among the relatives of the Prophet to obtain a large share. And he was rejecting this even though they became Muslims. To solve this problem, Caliph Omar set the scale of people's ranks based on kinship to the messenger, meaning the tribe, and based on being the first to embrace Islam, the creed, that is, when exactly he adopted Islam. The researcher Hassan Hafez comments by saying, Caliph Omar laid the foundations of the Arab Islamic tribe instead of the Arab tribe, so the highest ranks were ascribed to the senior companions and the people of the Prophet's house. Then, down to the rest of the Muslims according to the years of their adherence to Islam and their sacrifices for the sake of the preaching. This resulted in a situation in which the companions were distinguished, including, notably, the 10 companions promised paradise, and this was one of the factors that created huge fortunes for a large number of them. Yet, the third caliph, Uthman bin Affan, when he became the ruler, changed these rules, and he used to dispose of the money coming from the colonies as if it were his own money, and he gave his relatives a lot of resources. This had a decisive role in the revolution against him, as a repudiation of his method, according to the Arab narrations. The opposition here has nothing to do with religion, but it is a struggle over wealth, over money. The researcher Al-Jabri says, the ranking of people in having allowances according to kinship to the messenger and hastening to Islam, of course led to the accumulation of wealth in the hands of a certain group, and therefore, it was necessary to create large differences in terms of wealth. Also, the wealth of those who were already rich greatly increased, when they took privileged places in the conquered lands. According to the researcher Hisham Jade's book, Turmoil, The Dialectic of Religion and Politics in Early Islam, he says, the Caliph Uthman created a kind of privilege through grants, gifts and loans to specific people, including a grant of 100,000 dirhams to the companion Zayd bin Thabit, and the same to members of his family, and huge inexplicable fortunes were formed, and their sources can only be explained with loans or house of money facilitation. You will notice that there is no talk in the narrations about sources of income for this treasury, except from the bounties of the colonies they occupied. Here, the researcher Hamid Fati moves on to a very important point, which is that this huge wealth played a key political role in the nascent Arab colonial empire, especially during the period of the Caliphate of Uthman. The wealth of the companions played a role against Ali bin Abi Talib, when he wanted to become caliph, whether through the opposition of many of the wealthy against him, or stop supporting it, in order to preserve their wealth. The researcher Hassan Hafez explains that Caliph Uthman's economic policy led to an accumulation of wealth in the hands of a few, as he granted the companions the free choice to leave the city. Omar had prevented them from permanent residence outside it lest they would form centers of power, or that they would take advantage of their position to obtain economic privileges in the occupied countries. Caliph Omar ibn al-Khattab here is acting out of his political interest, and as I said, it bears no relation to Islam as a religion. We add to this, as the researcher Hassan Hafez says, that there is another source of wealth of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, which is the huge gains they attained from the positions they held in the occupied country. The researcher Al-Jabri says, Caliph Omar ibn al-Khattab took measures in his life to address the phenomenon of wealth accumulation, including preventing senior companions from traveling except for a specified period. and sharing wealth with the governors whom he appointed to rule the peoples of the occupied countries whenever they show huge wealth contrary to their original financial status. Like sharing the money of Saad bin Abi Waqqas, ruler of Kufa, Amr bin al-As, ruler of Egypt and ruler of Bahrain, Al-Numan bin Uday bin Harthan, ruler of Maysan, Nafi bin Amr al-Kusai, ruler of Mecca, and Yala bin Manyar, ruler of Yemen. But it is important here to say that this does not mean that Caliph Omar is absolutely just, nor that he wanted to establish justice among the invaders by distributing the money looted from the invaded countries among them. He does not want justice for the occupied peoples, a substantial difference as you can see. Well, how did this wealth play a significant role in the political conflicts and fighting among the companions? The first role of such wealth appeared in the work of the Shura Council, which was chosen by Caliph Omar and included 6 companions, Othman, Ali, Talha, al-Zubair, Abdul Rahman bin Auf, Saad bin Abi Waqqas, all of them from Quraysh and rich except for Ali ibn Abi Talib, cousin of the Prophet. After the murder of Caliph Uthman, the wealthy did not accept the succession of Ali bin Abi Talib, fearing his financial policy, which would not be in their interest, as the researcher Al-Jabri indicates. And now the fortunes of the great companions of the Prophet, based on a number of Arabic sources and narrations. Caliph Othman bin Affan. At his death, he left 150,000 dinars, and 1 million dirhams, in addition to properties, worth 100,000 dinars, and other houses, horses and camels. The companion Zubair bin al-Awwam. He was the richest of all, and his wealth was estimated at more than 35 million dirhams, and it has been stated 40 or 51 million dirhams, in addition to agricultural lands, livestock, and houses in occupied country. The companion Talha bin Ubaidillah. Upon his death, he left money worth 2.2 million dirhams, and 600,000 dinars in gold, and he had an annual income from a farm in Iraq worth 400,000 dirhams. He owned houses and other property whose value was estimated at hundreds of thousands of dirhams. The companion Abdul Rahman bin Auf, he was a merchant and had a fortune, but he got more rich thanks to the previously described privileges. At his death, he left money in the form of many gold bars, and vast areas of agricultural land. The price of one piece was 80,000 dinars, and he left 1,000 camels, 3,000 sheep, and 100 horses. The companion Amr ibn al-As. He assumed the rule of Egypt after invading it, and left upon his death an equivalent of 140 yards of gold. The main source of his wealth was what he takes from the tax levy of Egypt. The companion Abdullah bin Abbas. He benefited from his position as governor of the city of Basra in Iraq. And complaints were raised to Caliph, and when he asked him to reveal what he had taken from the treasury, Ibn Abbas fled, after usurping the entire money in the house of money, taking refuge with his uncles from the Qais tribe. Caliph Ali bin Abi Talib and his sons. Ali bin Abi Talib was poor before the invasions, but thereafter he received a large share of allowance and booty from fighting, which enabled him to enjoy polygamy and to have many children. Historians do not mention a large amount of Ali's money upon his death, and, despite that, his children became rich in other ways. Sons of Caliph Ali bin Abi Talib, Hassan and Hussein, the source of their wealth was the privileges granted to them by Caliph Muayyah bin Abi Sufyan. Al-Hassan asked Muayyah within the terms of the peace to give him 5 million dirhams. Caliph Muayyah also doubled the allowance of Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein from 5,000 to 1 million dirhams annually. Muayyah turned a blind eye to what they had taken from the treasury. Caliph Muayyah ibn Abi Sufyan. The wealth of the Caliph Muayyah and the Umayyads caliphs is caused by the privileges granted to them by Uthman bin Affan, in addition to their benefit from the leadership of armies and the rule of colonies. The companion Yala bin Manya left after his death 500,000 dinars, real estate and an estate worth 300,000 dinars. He financed the Battle of the Camel, and the source of his wealth was what he got when he ruled Yemen during the era of Caliph Omar and Othman. The companion Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas left after his death a fortune estimated at 250,000 dirhams, and died in his palace. The companion Anas ibn Malik. He was a servant of the Prophet, and had no wealth, but when he died, he left dozens of children and grandchildren, and a great wealth of land and money. There is an important observation, which is that Arabic narrations focus on this type of companions of the Prophet Muhammad, and it is important that we look for the companions who were really ascetics. They did not engage in a bloody struggle over wealth and power, like the companion Bilal bin Rabah. The truth is, I do not know whether or not we can find any reference to them. I hope no one shall say that this was the nature of their time, because this does not justify the crimes they committed against the occupied peoples. This does not justify the crimes, for two wrongs don't make a right. The main idea of this episode is that they are just human beings. We must abandon their reverence and the idea that their practice of Islam is the most acceptable practice and that we must follow its path, because as you have seen, it had nothing to do with religion. That is why we should follow what good they have done, and repudiate what evil they have done. This is because their sanctification is catastrophic, since it means that the Muslims should follow their example, occupying peoples and plundering their wealth. For this reason, Muslim terrorists who imitate this aspect of the companions show up. It is time for us to sanctify the human values contained in many types of Islam, and it is high time for us now to combat any Islam that is hostile to humanity, even if it is the Islam of the Quraysh tribe, the tribe of the Prophet Muhammad. Much obliged, and see you soon in the next episodes.